The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the nervous energy of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Zethkari adjusted his crystalline breathing apparatus as he watched the holographic display showing the advancing Void Swarm fleet. The massive dark ships moved like hungry shadows across star systems, consuming everything in their path. Honored delegates, Zethkari's voice resonated through the translator networks, reaching every corner of the vast amphitheater. We have lost the Kepler system, 12 billion souls gone. The Void Swarm shows no signs of slowing. A ripple of fear passed through the assembled beings. The insectoid Thrix clicked their mandibles anxiously while the gaseous nebular representatives pulsed with worried colors. In 3 standard cycles, the Void Swarm had torn through the outer rim territories like tissue paper. No weapon seemed to damage their biomechanical ships. No strategy could predict their movements. "What of the Titan Alliance fleet?" called out General Vrix, his scaled hide gleaming under the chamber's lights. "Surely our combined forces can hold the line at Proxima." "The Titans were obliterated at Vega Prime," Zethkari replied grimly. "Admiral Korath's entire armada vanished in 17 minutes. We monitored their final transmissions. The swarm ships simply absorbed their plasma bombardment and converted it into energy for their own weapons." Silence fell over the chamber like a shroud. The Void Swarm had emerged from the dark space between galaxies 6 months ago, a plague of living ships that consumed matter and energy alike. They showed no interest in communication, no mercy for civilians, no pattern that military strategists could exploit. "There must be something," whispered Counselor Yith, her tentacles writhing with distress. "Some weapon, some technology we haven't tried. The archives speak of elder races, beings of immense power who once walked among the stars." "Legends and myths," scoffed General Vrix. "We need practical solutions, not bedtime stories." But Zethkari's multifaceted eyes suddenly blazed with an idea that seemed impossible. Deep in the restricted archives, buried beneath layers of classified data and forgotten histories, lay references to a species that had vanished before the Galactic Council's formation. A race so ancient that most believed them to be fictional. "The Terrans," he breathed. The word sent a chill through the chamber. Every schoolchild knew the stories. The mythical warriors who could survive in any environment, who had supposedly tamed stellar fire and bent gravity to their will. The beings who had fought wars across dimensions and emerged victorious against cosmic horrors that made the current crisis seem trivial. "You can't be serious," General Vrix's scales darkened with disbelief. "The human legends are just that, legends, stories told to inspire hope in dark times." "Are they?" Zethkari pulled up the holographic archives, displaying fragments of data recovered from the oldest space stations. "Consider what we know. References to Terra appear in 17 different galactic languages, all describing the same general characteristics. Warriors of incredible adaptability, masters of impossible technologies, capable of feats that defy our understanding of physics." The evidence flickered before them in streams of ancient text and corrupted data files. References to humans who could survive in vacuum, who fought with weapons that manipulated time and space, who had once held back invasions from parallel realities. "Even if they existed," Counselor Yith's voice trembled, "that was over 10,000 cycles ago. They vanished completely. No trace, no ruins, no descendants. How could we possibly find them?" Zethkari manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on a particular data fragment. "Because they left breadcrumbs. Look here in the Andromus expedition logs. The survey team found something on the edge of the galactic rim. A signal, repeating on a frequency that doesn't match any known technology." The signal appeared as a complex waveform, pulsing with mathematical precision. It had been dismissed as natural cosmic noise for decades, but now Zethkari saw it differently. The pattern contained prime numbers, geometric sequences, and something that looked suspiciously like star charts. "You're suggesting we follow a ghost signal into the void based on children's stories," General Vrix said flatly. "I'm suggesting we're about to be extinct anyway," Zethkari replied. "The swarm will reach the core worlds in 2 cycles. Our combined fleets can't even slow them down. If there's even a remote possibility that the Terrans still exist, don't we owe it to every living being in this galaxy to try?" The debate that followed lasted hours. Representatives argued about resources, practicality, and the wisdom of chasing legends while their civilization crumbled. But as reports continued to pour in of lost worlds and shattered fleets, desperation began to override skepticism. Finally, Counselor Yith spoke the words that would change everything. I authorize the deployment of the exploration vessel Star Whisper. If Ambassador Zethkari believes this signal might lead to the mythical Terrans, then we have nothing left to lose by investigating. 3 days later, Zethkari stood on the bridge of the Star Whisper as it prepared to jump to the coordinates indicated by the ancient signal. The crew was a mixture of the galaxy's best xenoarchaeologists, linguists, and military specialists. They all knew they were probably flying toward nothing but empty space and death. Signal source located, announced the navigation officer, a young Altarian whose blue skin flickered with nervous energy. It's coming from a system that doesn't appear on any of our star charts. The readings are unusual. Unusual how? Zethkari asked. The system appears to be artificially hidden. There's some kind of gravitic distortion field masking its true size and composition. I'm reading at least 12 planets, but the energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. As they approached the hidden system, the crew watched in amazement as space itself seemed to unfold before them. The distortion field parted like a curtain, revealing a sight that defied everything they thought they knew about stellar engineering. Massive ring-shaped structures orbited a blue-white star, each one the size of a planet. Space elevators stretched between worlds, connected by streams of flowing energy that pulsed like arterial systems. In the distance, they could see what appeared to be artificial worlds, their surfaces gleaming with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Great ancestors," whispered the Altarian navigator, "it's beautiful and terrifying." Suddenly, their communications array blazed to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged spoke in perfect galactic standard, though there was something about the accent that seemed impossibly ancient. "Vessel Star Whisper, you are entering the Sol Preservation Zone. State your purpose and origin. Be advised that this space is under the protection of the Terran Expeditionary Force." Zethkari's breathing apparatus nearly failed. The legends were true. Humanity still existed. "This is Ambassador Zethkari of the Galactic Council," he managed to say. "We come seeking aid against an existential threat to our civilization. The Void Swarm has breached our outer defenses and is consuming everything in its path. Our military forces have proven ineffective." A long pause followed, during which Zethkari imagined human minds processing information at speeds that boggled comprehension. When the voice returned, it carried a weight of sadness and terrible knowledge. "The Void Swarm has returned. We had hoped they would remain dormant for another few millennia. Very well, Ambassador. You will be escorted to Station Olympus for debriefing. Be warned that the knowledge you seek comes with a price. Once you learn the truth about humanity and our long vigil, your understanding of the galaxy will never be the same." A ship appeared beside them without warning, its arrival undetected by their sensors until it chose to reveal itself. The vessel was unlike anything in the galactic databases, a seamless blend of organic curves and geometric precision that seemed to shift and flow as they watched. It was beautiful in a way that made their eyes water, as if their brains couldn't quite process what they were seeing. "Follow the Prometheus," the voice instructed. "Try not to stare too hard at the hull configuration. Your species weren't designed to perceive 11-dimensional mathematics." As they followed the impossible ship toward the ring stations, Zethkari realized that finding humanity might have been the easy part. Understanding what they had become and convincing them to help would be far more challenging than he had imagined. The Star Whisper docked at a station that existed partially outside normal spacetime, its corridors stretching in directions that their three-dimensional minds insisted shouldn't exist. They were met by beings who looked human, but moved with the fluid grace of apex predators, their eyes holding depths of knowledge and experience that spoke of eons spent watching the galaxy evolve. "Welcome to the last refuge of Terra," said their guide, a woman whose apparent youth was betrayed by eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, though that rank has little meaning here. You seek our aid against the Void Swarm. Before we can consider such intervention, you must understand what you're asking us to become once more." She led them through corridors lined with memorial walls containing billions of names, past viewing ports that showed impossible vistas of folded space and quantum gardens where flowers bloomed in 11 dimensions. The technology around them was so advanced it appeared magical, so integrated with human will that the boundary between biology and engineering had vanished entirely. Your species remember us as legends, Captain Chen continued as they walked. Warriors who fought impossible wars and vanished mysteriously. The truth is more complex. We didn't disappear, Ambassador. We withdrew. After the last cosmic war, after we had burned out star systems and reshaped reality itself to defeat entities that existed before the universe began, we made a choice. They entered a vast chamber where holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. Red markers indicated void swarm positions, their spread pattern revealing the terrible inevitability of galactic consumption. We became something that was no longer quite human in your understanding of the term, she said. We transcended the need for physical matter, learned to exist in multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously, developed weapons that could unwrite reality itself. We became the very thing we had fought against, cosmic forces of nature wearing familiar faces. Zethkari's translator barely managed to convey the concepts she was describing. Then you can stop the swarm. Oh yes, Captain Chen's smile was sad and terrible. We can stop them quite easily, but the cost will be every promise we made to ourselves about remaining human. The weapons we would need to use, the changes we would have to undergo, would transform us back into something your galaxy wouldn't recognize or welcome. She gestured to the holographic displays, where simulations showed the void swarm's inexorable advance. The swarm isn't just a fleet of ships, Ambassador. They're refugees from a dying universe, seeking to consume ours to fuel their survival. Stopping them requires understanding forces that predate galactic civilization itself. But you will help us? Zethkari asked desperately. Captain Chen studied him with eyes that held the weight of cosmic responsibility. That decision is not mine alone to make. The question will be put to the consensus, what remains of humanity's collective will. If we choose to intervene, it will mean abandoning 10,000 years of peaceful isolation and becoming once again the mythical beings your stories describe. As if summoned by her words, other figures began to materialize around them, appearing not through doorways, but simply stepping out of spaces that hadn't existed moments before. Men and women whose faces held the same ageless quality, whose presence made reality itself seem more solid and defined. The consensus will convene, announced one of them, a man whose appearance flickered between young and old, as if he existed across multiple timelines simultaneously. The question is before us. Do we emerge from our long exile to save a galaxy that has forgotten us, knowing that doing so will cost us everything we have become in the peace we have known? The chamber filled with more figures, hundreds of them, representing the last remnants of humanity scattered across dimensions and realities. Zethkari realized he was witnessing something unprecedented, the gathering of beings who had voluntarily chosen to limit their cosmic power in service of a greater peace. The debate will take approximately 7 minutes in your time frame, Captain Chen informed him. Human cognitive acceleration allows us to conduct millennia of discussion in moments of real time. You should prepare yourself for our answer. As the consensus began their impossible deliberation, Zethkari watched through the viewing ports as the hidden Sol system continued its ancient dance. Somewhere in the galaxy beyond, the void swarm consumed star systems and slaughtered billions. The mythical humans had been found, but whether they would choose to become legends once more remained the question that would determine the fate of all galactic civilization. The 7 minutes stretched like eternity as humanity decided whether to abandon their hard-won peace and become once again the cosmic warriors their galaxy desperately needed them to be. The 7 minutes ended with a silence that seemed to stretch across dimensions. Captain Chen's expression remained unreadable as the assembled consciousness of humanity reached their verdict. Around them, the other figures began to shimmer and fade, returning to whatever impossible spaces they had emerged from. The consensus has decided, Chen announced finally. We will intervene. However, you must understand what this means, Ambassador. We are not the same species that your legends describe. We have spent 10 millennia learning to exist without violence, without the tools of cosmic war. To face the void swarm, we must become something we swore we would never be again. Zethkari felt relief and terror in equal measure. What do you require from us? Nothing you can provide, Chen replied. This is our burden to bear, but we want you to understand what you will witness. When we engage the Void Swarm, we will not be fighting as your allies fight. We will be rewriting the fundamental rules of reality in localized space. The weapons we must employ exist outside conventional physics. She led him to another viewing port where the space around Saul had begun to change. The ring stations were reconfiguring themselves, their geometric patterns shifting into configurations that made his optical organs ache. Energy streams between the artificial worlds pulsed with increasing intensity. The Prometheus Protocol is being initialized, Chen explained. We are awakening technologies that have slept for 10,000 years, calling back soldiers who have existed as pure consciousness in quantum foam, preparing weapons that we dismantled after the last cosmic war. Through the port, Zethkari could see ships materializing in the void around them. But these weren't vessels in any sense he understood. They appeared as geometric impossibilities, structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Some looked like crystalline flowers that bloomed in 11 directions. Others resembled living mathematics given physical form. "Your ships," he whispered. "They're beautiful and terrifying." "They're not ships," Chen corrected. "They're expressions of human will made manifest in reality. Each one is piloted by a consciousness that has chosen to limit itself back to physical existence for this mission. The sacrifice they're making is beyond your comprehension." A new voice spoke from behind them, and Zethkari turned to see a man who radiated an aura of barely contained power. His appearance shifted constantly, as if his true form was too vast for their dimensional framework to contain. "Admiral Marcus Kane," he introduced himself. "I commanded the 7th Reality Fleet during the Entropy Wars. I've been existing as distributed consciousness for 8,000 years. Returning to linear time and single-point awareness feels like being buried alive, but the swarm requires our attention." "You fought them before?" Zethkari asked. Kane's expression grew grim. "The Void Swarm isn't from this universe, Ambassador. They're refugees from a reality that underwent complete thermal death. They learned to survive by consuming the quantum structure of spacetime itself, converting matter and energy into a form their dying universe could process." The revelation hit Zethkari like a physical blow. "They're not invaders, they're trying to save their own people." "Yes and no," Kane replied. "They were trying to save their people originally, but the process changed them. They became something else, something that can only exist by consuming other realities. They're not evil in any sense you would understand, but they are completely antithetical to life as we know it." Chen activated a holographic display showing the current galactic situation. The red markers indicating Void Swarm positions had advanced significantly even in the short time since their arrival. "They've taken the Centauri cluster," she announced. 43 worlds gone. At their current rate of expansion, they'll reach the galactic core in 18 standard days. "Then we move now," Kane decided. "Signal the fleet. Operation Prometheus is authorized. All restrictions on reality manipulation are lifted for the duration of this engagement." Zethkari watched through the viewing ports as the impossible human fleet began to move. The crystalline ship forms shifted and flowed like living things, their surfaces rippling with energies that made space itself seem fluid. As they accelerated, they didn't appear to move through space so much as convince space to relocate around them. "You should return to your people," Chen advised. "What's about to happen will be visible across the galaxy. They'll need to understand that we're not another threat, just the return of an old guardian." "I want to observe," Zethkari insisted. "The Council will need detailed reports of what transpires." Kane smiled, and for a moment, his shifting features solidified into something recognizably human. "Very well, but stay on the Olympus station. Where we're going, your three-dimensional existence wouldn't survive the transition." The human fleet departed Sol system like a wave of impossible light, leaving reality twisted in their wake. Zethkari remained on the station with a skeleton crew of human observers, watching through sensors that operated on principles his science couldn't begin to fathom. The first engagement occurred at the edge of the Kepler Nebula, where a void swarm tendril was consuming a gas giant to fuel their advance. The human fleet emerged from folded space like a flock of cosmic predators, their ship forms spreading across 3 dimensions simultaneously. What followed wasn't a battle in any conventional sense. The void swarm vessels, massive biomechanical constructs the size of moons, turned to engage the much smaller human craft. Their weapons, which had effortlessly destroyed the galaxy's greatest fleets, fired streams of concentrated entropy that could age matter to dust in seconds. The entropy streams struck the human ships and simply stopped existing. The weapons that had carved through neutronium hull plating struck reality distortion fields and were absorbed, converted, and redirected back at their sources. But that was only the beginning. Admiral Kane's flagship, a construct that resembled a four-dimensional flower made of crystallized time, began to sing. The sound propagated through vacuum, through dimensions that shouldn't exist, reaching the void's swarm fleet with harmonics that attacked the fundamental forces holding their ships together. The alien vessels began to come apart at the quantum level, their matter reverting to component elements, then to energy, then to probability clouds. But instead of dying, the consciousness within them began to scream across dimensional barriers, calling for reinforcements from the spaces between realities. Phase 2 contact, Chen announced calmly. The swarm is summoning its deep reserves. Kane, you're authorized to deploy the paradox weapons. What happened next defied Zethkari's ability to process. Kane's ship began to unfold in directions that didn't have names, revealing weapons systems that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. They fired bursts of crystallized causality that struck the void swarm vessels before they had been fired, creating temporal loops that trapped entire fleets in recursive destruction. But the swarm adapted with frightening speed. Their remaining ships began to merge, becoming something larger and more terrible. The combined entity pulsed with energies drawn from the death of their home universe, growing larger as it consumed the destroyed remnants of its own forces. Fascinating, Kane's voice crackled through the communications array. They're entering full metamorphosis protocol. It's been a while since I've seen a reality-class entity manifest. The merged void swarm vessel had become something that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. It existed as a wound in reality itself, a place where the laws of physics went to die. Energy and matter flowed into it continuously, feeding its growth as it prepared to birth something even worse. Kane, Chen's voice carried a note of warning. Containment protocols are failing. If that entity completes its transformation, it will become capable of consuming entire star systems instantaneously. I know, Kane replied, deploying the God Killers. Around his flagship, space began to crack like breaking glass. Weapons that humanity had sworn never to use again materialized from impossible angles, their very existence causing reality to stress and groan. These were the tools they had used against entities that existed before the universe began, weapons that could kill concepts and unmake the fundamental forces. The God Killers fired in perfect synchronization, their beams striking the transforming void swarm entity from 11 directions simultaneously. What they destroyed wasn't just the creature's physical form, but its very possibility of existence. They reached back through time and prevented it from ever having been created, erasing it from the causal structure of reality itself. The weapon discharge sent shockwaves through local spacetime that registered on sensors throughout the galaxy. Entire star systems experienced temporal fluctuations as the blast echoed across dimensional barriers. On Olympus Station, Zethkari watched in awe and terror as humanity demonstrated why they had chosen exile over continued existence as cosmic forces. Target neutralized, Kane reported. Beginning cleanup operations, we'll need to stabilize local spacetime before the dimensional cracks spread. But even as the human fleet worked to repair the damage their weapons had caused, new readings appeared on the sensors. The Void Swarm had responded to the destruction of their advance force by deploying something much worse. Admiral, Chen's voice was tight with concern. Long-range sensors are detecting massive spatial distortions approaching from the galactic rim. The swarm is deploying their Harvester-class entities. Multiple contacts, each one the size of a small moon. Kane's reply carried a weariness that spoke of cosmic responsibility. How many? 47 confirmed, possibly more masked by interference. Each one is capable of consuming entire star systems to fuel the swarm's advance. Admiral, at this level of deployment, they're not just seeking to survive anymore. They're attempting to replace our reality with theirs entirely. Zethkari felt the blood drain from his breathing organs. Can you stop that many? There was a long pause before Kane answered. Yes, but not as we are now. We'll need to fully awaken the Titan protocols, call back every human consciousness from wherever they've scattered across the dimensions. We'll need to become what we were during the entropy wars, reality-manipulating entities capable of rewriting the laws of physics in real time. The cost, Chen asked quietly. Everything we've built in 10,000 years of peace. Every promise we made to ourselves about remaining human. If we fully activate the Titan protocols, we'll become cosmic forces of nature. We might save the galaxy, but we'll no longer be recognizable as the species you remember. Through the viewing ports, Zethkari could see the approaching storm. The Void Swarm harvesters moved through space like living black holes, their passage leaving trails of consumed matter and twisted spacetime. Behind them came fleets beyond counting, the full might of a species that had survived the death of their entire universe. The moment of truth had arrived. Humanity would either save the galaxy by sacrificing everything they had become, or watch as reality itself was consumed by entities from a dead universe. There could be no middle ground, no compromise with forces that existed by consuming the fundamental structure of existence. Admiral Kane's voice echoed across the communication channels as he prepared to make the choice that would transform humanity once more into the mythical beings the galaxy remembered. All units, this is Kane. Authorization Omega, 1 is now in effect. We are implementing full Titan protocol activation. Prepare for metamorphosis to reality-class combat forms. Whatever we become after this battle, remember that we do this so that life itself might continue to exist in this universe. The transformation began immediately. Human consciousness scattered across 11 dimensions began to condense and focus, taking on aspects of cosmic power that they had voluntarily abandoned millennia ago. The peaceful guardians of Sol were about to become legends once more, and the galaxy would never be the same. The transformation of humanity began with a sound that wasn't quite music and wasn't quite screaming. Across 11 dimensions, human consciousnesses that had spent millennia existing as pure thought and dream began to coalesce into forms capable of waging war against the fundamental forces of reality itself. Zethkari watched from Olympus Station as the space around Sol became something his instruments could barely register. The ring stations reconfigured themselves into geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly, while the artificial worlds began to pulse with energies that made stars seem dim by comparison. Ambassador, Captain Chen's voice had changed, carrying harmonics that seemed to vibrate through dimensions his species couldn't perceive. You should witness this, but understand that what you're seeing is humanity abandoning everything we've become in order to save everything you are. Through the viewing ports, he could see the human fleet undergoing metamorphosis. The ship forms that had seemed impossible before now became truly otherworldly, expanding and contracting through spaces that folded in on themselves. Admiral Kane's flagship had become something that resembled a living constellation, its points of light connected by streams of crystallized causality. The Titan protocols are fully active, Chen continued, her physical form beginning to shimmer as her consciousness expanded beyond the confines of linear existence. We are remembering how to be gods of war, how to fight entities that exist outside the normal causal structure of reality. Across the galaxy, the effect was immediate and terrifying. Every sentient species capable of detecting dimensional fluctuations felt the change as humanity awakened to its full potential. Ancient emergency protocols activated in civilizations that had long forgotten their original purpose, warning systems that had been dormant since the last cosmic war. The Void Swarm harvesters, massive entities the size of moons that had been approaching through normal space, suddenly found their path blocked by something that shouldn't exist. A barrier of crystallized time stretched across 3-star systems, its surface reflecting not light but possibilities, showing potential futures where the swarm had never existed at all. Contact with Harvester Formation, Kane's voice now carried the weight of cosmic authority. Beginning reality restructuring operations, all consciousness nodes prepare for 11-dimensional combat deployment. What followed was less a battle than a fundamental disagreement between different versions of what reality should be. The Void Swarm harvesters, creatures that consumed matter and energy to fuel their existence, encountered weapons that attacked the very concept of consumption. Human reality warpers struck not at the aliens' physical forms, but at the logical structures that allowed them to exist. The first harvester simply ceased. Not destroyed, not damaged, but edited out of the causal framework of the universe. One moment it was there, a massive biomechanical entity capable of consuming star systems. The next moment it had never existed at all. The space it had occupied filled with normal matter and energy, as if the universe was correcting a mistake. But the Void Swarm had learned from their encounters with cosmic-level entities before. The remaining harvesters began to adapt, their forms becoming increasingly abstract as they shed the limitations of physical existence. They became living wounds in space-time, places where the rules of reality had been suspended entirely. Impressive, Kane observed as one of the transformed harvesters consumed a small asteroid not by eating it, but by convincing the universe that the asteroid had never existed. They're learning to fight on our level, initiating Phase 3 protocols. The human fleet began to sing in harmonies that propagated through dimensions beyond the normal four. Their song wasn't made of sound waves, but of mathematical equations that described the optimal configuration of reality. Where the song touched space-time, matter and energy reorganized themselves according to human will. Stars burned brighter and cleaner, their fusion processes optimized beyond theoretical maximums. Planets shifted in their orbits to create perfect resonance patterns that amplified the fleet's reality manipulation capabilities. The very fabric of space began to support human consciousness in ways that normal physics declared impossible. Against this cosmic symphony, the Void Swarm deployed their ultimate weapon. Deep in the space between galaxies, something that had been sleeping since their universe died began to wake. It was older than stars, older than matter itself, a fragment of the original consciousness that had existed before the first universe began. Primordial contact, Chen announced, her voice now echoing from multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously. The swarm has awakened their founder entity. Kane, we're detecting reality cascade failures approaching from the galactic rim. Whatever that thing is, it's unmaking the basic structure of space-time as it moves. Zethkari's instruments went insane as they tried to register readings from the approaching entity. It existed simultaneously in past, present, and future, its very presence creating paradoxes that threatened to collapse local causality. Stars aged billions of years in seconds as it passed, while others reverted to their primordial hydrogen clouds. I know what that is. Kane's voice carried a note of recognition mixed with cosmic dread. It's a conceptual entity, a fragment of the consciousness that existed before the first universe. During the entropy wars, we fought 3 of them. It took the combined will of every human consciousness to contain just one. Then we combine our will again, Chen replied with determination that transcended dimensional barriers. Signal the consensus. Emergency Protocol 0 is now in effect. All human consciousness, regardless of current state or location, is hereby drafted for reality defense operations. What happened next was unprecedented in the history of the galaxy. Every human who had ever lived, died, or transcended physical existence found their consciousness called back to a single purpose. Scientists who had become living equations, artists who had painted in 11-dimensional color spectrums, philosophers who had solved the fundamental questions of existence, all returned to wage war against the ultimate threat to reality itself. The space around Sol became a nexus point where billions of human minds focused their combined will. They reached across dimensions, through time, beyond the normal limitations of causality, to gather every fragment of human experience and knowledge into a single weapon of conceptual warfare. Deploying the consensus weapon, Kane announced as his flagship began to unfold into configurations that existed in impossible directions. All human consciousness, prepare for unified deployment. We go into battle not as individuals, but as a single entity representing the will of our entire species. The resulting construct defied description. It was part weapon, part philosophy, part mathematical proof that consciousness could triumph over entropy. It existed as a living argument for the value of individual existence against forces that sought to reduce everything to uniform nothingness. When it engaged the primordial entity, the battle was fought on levels that normal matter couldn't perceive. They fought with concepts made manifest, with the fundamental forces that shaped reality itself. The primordial entity attacked with arguments that existence was suffering, that the natural state of the universe was entropy and death, that consciousness was an aberration to be corrected. Humanity responded with 10,000 years of art, music, literature, and scientific discovery. They fought back with love letters and mathematical theorems, with children's laughter and the satisfaction of problems solved. Every human experience, from the smallest moment of joy to the greatest triumphs of the spirit, was weaponized against the cosmic nihilism of the primordial entity. The battle raged across multiple dimensions simultaneously, its effects visible throughout the galaxy as space-time itself groaned under the strain of competing reality frameworks. On thousands of worlds, sentient beings looked up at skis that flickered between different versions of physics as the two forces struggled for conceptual dominance. Slowly, incrementally, humanity began to win, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through sheer stubborn insistence that existence was worth preserving. The primordial entity, ancient beyond measure and wise in the ways of cosmic entropy, found itself confronted by a species that refused to accept that suffering was meaningless or that death was the natural state of the universe. The entity is destabilizing, Chen reported as her consciousness monitored the battle from multiple dimensional angles. It's beginning to doubt its own fundamental premises. Humanity's insistence on the value of individual existence is creating logical paradoxes in its core programming. The end came not with destruction, but with transformation. The primordial entity, faced with irrefutable proof that consciousness could create meaning even in an entropic universe, began to change. Instead of seeking to unmake reality, it began to wonder what reality might become if nurtured rather than consumed. "Stand down weapons," Kane ordered as the ancient entity's hostility faded into curiosity. "It's not our enemy anymore. It's becoming something new, something that might find purpose in creation rather than destruction." With their founder entity transformed, the remaining void swarm forces found themselves cut off from the nihilistic certainty that had driven their consumption. Without the underlying philosophy that existence was suffering, their biomechanical forms began to evolve in new directions, seeking ways to exist that didn't require the destruction of others. The war was over, but humanity had paid the price they had always known it would require. They had become cosmic entities, beings of such vast consciousness and reality-manipulating power that they could no longer exist alongside normal matter without causing reality distortions. "Ambassador," Chen said as she prepared to depart for the spaces between dimensions, "your people are safe. The galaxy will continue to exist, to grow, to create new forms of life and consciousness. But we cannot remain. Our presence here would warp space-time around every world, make normal existence impossible for carbon-based life." "Where will you go?" Zethkari asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Back to the spaces between realities, to the quantum foam where consciousness can exist without affecting normal matter. We'll continue to watch, to guard against threats that normal species cannot perceive. If the galaxy ever faces another existential crisis, we'll return. But until then, we must remain the stuff of legends." As the human fleet prepared to depart normal space-time, Admiral Kane opened a final communication channel to address the galaxy's survivors. "To all sentient species, this is Admiral Marcus Kane of the Terran Expeditionary Force. The immediate threat has been neutralized. The Void Swarm has been transformed into something that will seek to create rather than consume. Your civilizations are free to continue their development without interference from entities seeking to unmake reality itself." He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of cosmic responsibility and infinite sadness. "We return now to our long exile in the spaces between dimensions. Remember us not as gods or conquerors, but as guardians who chose to sacrifice our own peace to preserve your future. Live well, dream boldly, and create wonders that justify our faith in the value of conscious existence." One by one, the impossible human ships began to phase out of normal space-time, their departure leaving reality more stable and coherent than it had been in eons. They faded not into darkness, but into possibility, becoming once again the myths and legends that inspired hope during the darkest times. Zethkari remained on Olympus Station long enough to see the last human consciousness depart for the quantum realm. Captain Chen was the final to leave, her form already shimmering as she prepared to abandon linear existence once more. "Will we see you again?" he asked. Her smile was sad and eternal. "In your stories, Ambassador, in your dreams of what heroes might accomplish when the universe itself is at stake." We are the legends now, the tales your children will tell their children about the day the ancient guardians returned to save everything that matters. She faded into possibility, leaving behind only the echo of words that would be repeated across the galaxy for generations to come. We are humanity. We endure. We protect. We remember. The Sol system returned to its hidden state, masked by gravitational distortions that would make it invisible to normal sensors. But throughout the galaxy, the memory of what had transpired would live on in 1,000 different cultures and languages. The story of the day when humanity emerged from legend to save all sentient life, then returned to myth by choice rather than necessity. In the years that followed, children across the galaxy would look up at stars and dream of ancient guardians watching from the spaces between realities, ready to return if ever the universe faced extinction again. They would tell stories of humans who became gods to save others, then chose to become legends rather than rulers. And in the quantum foam between dimensions, humanity continued their eternal vigil, standing guard against threats that normal matter could never perceive, waiting for the day when they might be needed once more to stand between consciousness and the dark forces that sought to unmake everything that thought, felt, and dreamed of better tomorrows. The legends were real, the guardians endured, and the galaxy was safe to continue its ancient dance of creation, protected by watchers who had chosen love over power and sacrifice over dominion. In the end, that choice made all the difference between a universe of wonders and a cosmos of eternal night.